Hello and good morning, everyone, and welcome to your daily sit rep for Monday, the 29th of September, 2025. I'm your host, Mike Shelby. With that, Robert, good morning. Let's go ahead and jump inside the Beltway, starting with this official request from President Trump to rule on birthright citizenship over at the Supreme Court. What's the latest?
So Friday, the Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to rule on his birthright citizenship executive order. And what they're asking is for the court to review a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling against Trump and a New Hampshire federal court ruling against the Trump administration. And they're asking for this ruling by June 2026. So they want the Supreme Court to take up this issue in their next session, which I think starts next week.
Okay. And based off anything that you've heard out of the Supreme Court, which way do you think they're likely to rule on this?
I think it's now, I would put it at between a 50 and 60% chance they rule for Trump. Based on some recent rulings where they have sided with Trump on immigration issues, I think there's a good chance we get at least a 5-4 decision.
Mm-hmm. And what's the stop? You know, one of the things we've talked about many times is Chief Justice Roberts does not like procedural errors. I just look at this and I say, well, this is maybe a really good opportunity for Chief Justice John Roberts to say, well, maybe the executive order is not unconstitutional, but we'd rather see this go through Congress. You think that's a possibility?
It is a possibility, but that would require one of the other conservative justices on the court to agree with Roberts. That's not a non-zero chance. He could do something like he's done in the past, say that they haven't followed exactly the Administrative Procedures Act as they're required to. And one of the possibilities of them doing that is that I think right now the Trump administration is fighting in the courts, or is getting ready to fight in the courts. Trump is trying to curtail the comment period on some of his executive orders and some of these regulations he's trying to get done through, like for power, through the EPA and Department of Energy. That might be one angle that Roberts takes, is that they didn't perfectly follow it by allowing comment periods on some of these orders, including this one.
Okay. And then also, the White House wants this ruling by June 2026. Would that set up, I mean, that's obviously heading into the midterms. I wouldn't even call it a concern. I will just tell you, this is going to be another accelerator of left-wing backlash if the Trump administration, through the Supreme Court, can successfully curtail birthright citizenship. I think we're going to see that added to the protests, and 26 is obviously shaping up to be a very contentious year. We're going to see a lot of protests. We are right on this cusp of seeing these left-wing groups push into, not just say in Portland and Chicago, but in other places across the country, push into this selective or organized resistance phase that I've been talking about for almost the past year now. So we're right there. All right, thanks for that. Speaking of the Supreme Court here, they have had some rulings that are favorable to the Trump administration, and it looks like they're going to support Trump in another, or it looks like they did rather, on allowing the Trump administration to block these foreign aid funds.
Yeah, this was a ruling from Friday, and they said that they removed a lower court order blocking the Trump administration from cutting $4 billion in foreign aid funds. And they said that they did this. It was an unsigned decision, a 6-3 decision, saying that the Trump administration showed that it's likely to win this legal fight over blocking foreign aid funding, which to me looks like the Supreme Court is telling the Trump administration they're going to win on what's called the pocket rescission theory. I think we covered this a couple months ago. Basically, what the Trump administration is trying to do is pause for 45 days some of this federal aid funding. I think right now they're trying to do they're trying to do like $10 billion in total. But this $4 billion, what they're doing is putting a pause on it ahead of the end of the fiscal year. And if Congress doesn't step in to do anything about it before next week or the middle of this week, then Trump is effectively cutting congressionally mandated spending unilaterally without any congressional approval. And this is a significant expansion of presidential power now, where the liberal justices said that this is running into some separation of powers issues. But to me, this is like the Supreme Court is basically telling the Trump administration now the president has the power to unilaterally cut federal spending that's mandated by Congress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also note that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did not like that whatsoever. He was on one of the Sunday news talk shows. All right. On this topic here, you know what? Let's move on to the Department of Transportation here threatening these Democrat states.
Yeah, so they DOT Secretary Sean Duffy told California and some other states they have 30 days to crack down on foreign drivers who are issued commercial driver's licenses, or they are going to withhold transportation funding. And I think for California, that's in like $130 million. And he said that data from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration showed that a quarter of CDLs in California were illegally obtained. So they were issued to either legal or illegal immigrants who do not have, or visa holders who do not have a work permit from the federal government.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. All right. Well, it should be good for California truck drivers then if they'll have less competition. All right. Let's go ahead and move on here to another crackdown here on unaccompanied minors.
Yeah, so there was an internal memo that went around last week in the Department of Justice, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche directed all 93 U.S. attorneys to start criminal investigations and prosecutions against the sponsors of unaccompanied minor illegal immigrants. And specifically, he wants the U.S. attorneys to focus on potential cases of sex and human trafficking for forced labor, any false statements that these sponsors have made, any identity theft, or harboring illegal aliens. And this is basically a response during the Biden administration, who loosened background check requirements for these sponsors. And we also, I think, covered it in 2023. I'm sorry. We covered it in 2023. There was actually a Health and Human Services whistleblower who said that this entire unaccompanied minors program under Biden was effectively a government-sponsored human trafficking operation. Mm-hmm. And I think that that raid earlier this year in California during the LA federal surge showed that there is at least some human trafficking going on here, because I think they detained 13 minors in that raid, illegal immigrants who were minors who were conducting forced labor at a California pot farm.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is good news that the Trump administration and DOJ finally cracking down on this. Hey, this is only, I mean, it's not that related, but I did see over the weekend. Did you happen to see, there was a post on X that showed, I think it was right here in Texas, hundreds or maybe thousands of H-1B visa workers all had the same address listed on their home of record. Did you happen to see that?
I did.
There's obviously no one has noticed that until now. I think that's difficult for me to believe. But I just want to point this out. You know, people in the federal government had to have been knowing all this stuff was going on. And I don't want to play politics here, but obviously not enough was done over the previous 4 years. And just some very slight policy changes. Hopefully a lot of these people start get rolled up and saving the kids and putting people who belong under the prisons, at least in the prisons.
Yeah, on the H-1B issue, there's actually, I imagine that kind of fraud is much more widespread than just Texas, because there's basically an entire industry of middlemen who work with, for example, tech companies to get H-1B visa holders over here, and they obviously make money off of those contracts. And so I imagine this is much more widespread than just that one location in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. All right, let's move on here. Doxing has been a big thing in the news for the past several months, because you have all these left-wing activists trying to dox or publish the personal information of federal ICE agents. And in one case here, they followed an ICE agent to his home, figured out where he lived, and then posted that information online.
Yeah, and a federal grand jury in California returned an indictment against these three women, two of them from California and one from Colorado, and they're charged with conspiracy and publicly disclosing the personal information of a federal agent. I think this is significant because the Trump administration has had trouble with some of these grand juries, especially in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and that they returned an indictment against these women for doxing this ICE agent, I think is significant, and it shows that the federal government is likely to win on this prosecution.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then, so they were charged for conspiracy and then also for publicly disclosing this personal information. Was there a surveillance charge or stalking or anything like that added on here?
I didn't see in the public release from the DOJ.
Okay, because that is a question that I would have. All right, let's move on here. So, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said he's not going to run. And is this setting up Mamdani for a win?
I think so. So he missed the deadline to remove his name from the New York City mayoral ballot, and they are heading into that election this November. And right now, according to multiple public polls that were taken before Adams announced that he was dropping out, Mamdani was 15 or more points higher than Cuomo, who was ahead of Adams and Curtis Sliwa. And I think this is the potential to cause some confusion for people who are either supporters of the mainstream liberal side of the Democratic Party or voting against Mamdani, because now I think they're going to have their vote split between Cuomo and Adams because they're both going to be on the ballot. And I think this is making it more likely that Mamdani is going to win.
Mm-hmm. All right. Eric Adams, not even running, still on the ballot. Amazing. Thanks for that, Robert. Let's go ahead and move on over to the global sit rep. Jared, good morning. Starting with Venezuela.
Yes. So NBC, citing anonymous sources, claims that the U.S. military is preparing options for strikes inside of Venezuela. This will obviously be an enormous escalation. Now, the sources claim that the strikes are not yet approved by President Trump, but could happen within the next several weeks. I do want to pump the brakes on their actual reporting here. We've talked before. I think that's going to be a line that would require all kinds of diplomacy with Venezuela ahead of any kind of conduct there. And this may actually just be an exploration, similar to like what we saw with Operation Causeway, the potential invasion of Taiwan, or the now infamous plan to take over Canada, where it's just an exploration of an idea, but not necessarily a plan to carry out.
Sure.
If we
the Pentagon's job is to plan for contingencies all across the world, including at Southcom in Venezuela. I have zero doubt that there are military plans to strike inside Venezuela being drawn up. 100%, no doubt whatsoever. But there's a big difference in having these target decks and having these plans on a table in someone's office and actually Trump signing a cross-border operation, and that would run into tons of congressional pushback over declaration of war and all these other things. A strike in international water on the grounds of national security is one thing. Striking inside Venezuela is a completely different animal. So, Jared, thank you, and I agree with you for pushing back. I mean, anything could happen. It's 2025.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't go overboard right now, at least on this.
No. I do want to say there is a path to it. If I'm correct in that this show of force long-term deployment that we are seeing is to change Maduro's policy without necessarily changing his regime, then what we're seeing, which actually this map meant to kind of point this out, the Venezuelan states over on the left side here, there is a massive Venezuelan troop deployment specifically that is on a counter-narcotics mission. If Trump wanted to bring Maduro on side and let him know, hey, look, we're not trying to remove you, we just want you to stop the drugs, we could see a joint operation there. It would be tough to get, but that would also go toward that would fit right in with Trump's goals for diplomacy of achieving what should be impossible.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to this Chinese stablecoin.
Yes. This was actually a very quiet launch between China and Kazakhstan. Now, they launched the first Chinese stablecoin earlier this month, actually on the 13th. But the big thing that matters here is the Chinese company that was ordered to do this by the Chinese government is developing a blockchain payment platform for use throughout all of the Belt and Road Initiative countries. That's, I think it was 170 plus countries last time I looked. It's most of the world. That would actually, and this is all toward the objective of having something to compete with SWIFT. We've talked before, as far back as 22, that, when Russia was kicked off a SWIFT brief for a while after invading Ukraine, that had to be something that Russia or that China was looking at of, oh man, we will be kicked off if we move on Taiwan. We need something else.
All right.
And then
Well, this is interesting too, because this is the whole theory behind central bank digital currencies is you're going to make cross-border payments instant. And this is something that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has talked about with his US dollar stable coin. There's a handful of them. I don't know if they're going to eventually settle on one or let multiple company like USD Coin and Tether multiple operate there. But this is interesting that China is now getting involved in this, because this is a technology that is in demand, and if China really wants to expand the use of the renminbi, I would think they have to have a digital renminbi, which means, or in this case, a stable coin. You basically have a proxy for it. All right, thanks for that, Jared. Let's move on. Hit this last item in Germany.
Yep, this coming right from the German defense minister. He was speaking at the Warsaw Security Forum, and he told Europe that they have to be prepared to provide sustainable support to Ukraine more resiliently and forcefully than in recent months. So basically, they're going to continue upping it, and it's not going to be buy American to send to Ukraine. It's going to be produce European to send to Ukraine. He also told the European Union representative that they have to provide a more flexible regulatory framework for defense production, since they're all intertwined there as a federation. Gotcha. So I do expect to see considerably more of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Jared. And coming up, we have 47 protests today, well within the baseline, much lower, I think about half of what we saw last week on Monday. So, and then finally, that's going to do it for today's Sit Rep. Over on the high side, for our early warning members, we do, for those of you just joining us here, daily Sit Rep. We do it every day, roughly 15, 20 minutes. We cover what's going on at home and around the world. And then we jump over to our early warning members only briefing, where we discuss homeland operations. We're talking about Antifa. I've noticed there are these two Antifa channels on Telegram, and they're signifying something very important. And I'll share that with early warning folks. We'll also run through all of our homeland operations and some more stuff as well. If you'd like to join us, head over to forwardobserver.com/trial. Sign up for a free day trial. And then once you join, hit the live stream button, right? When you go on the website, hit the live stream button and join us for the rest of this briefing. With that, we appreciate your support, everyone. And Jared, please take us over. Early warning folks, please stand by.